The next morning he came to get us, and while he was locking the locks, one of my companions whispered, "Let's go." Away we ran, however, but without much forethought, because we all ran in the same direction rather than in different ones. And just as the guard began to fire with his pistol, I was rounding a corner at a full gallop, and looking back at him, my right shoulder hit a light pole, knocking me to the ground. I thought he'd hit me, but he hadn't. He came over me with his pistol, demanding to know where the other two were, and I couldn't tell him because I didn't know. He got a rifle and finally spotted the others in a field, and when he began shooting at them with a rifle, the others wisely came back with their hands up. Again, we were sentenced to 14 days on bread and water in the cooler. Stalag 7 held enlisted men as well as officers, and under the Geneva Convention, what the Germans went through the motions of observing, officers could not be worked, which was not a blessing, but enlisted men could. And thus the Germans boxcarred many enlisted men each day to Munich to help clean up the rubble caused by the daily bombings. And one day a group of American enlisted men came into our compound on a work detail. And I approached one of them and asked him if he wanted to switch with me and stay in the officer's compound. He readily agreed, not knowing that conditions were worse there, and we exchanged dog tags, and that is when I found out that he was a Goldberg. I went out this detail, and in the days following, I was included in the working parties taken to Munich. There, I scrounged through the rubble, collected some ragged civilian clothes I hoped to use in an escape attempt, and I tentatively decided that I would try to get to Lake Constance at the Swiss border. In preparation, I had learned that there were Frenchmen commando camps, that is, French workmen who were impressed by the Germans to work their large state farms. I found out the location of one of them, located about 10 miles south of Munich in a town named Grunwald, and I planned to aim for it if I succeeded in escaping. And I cannot impress upon you how important the element of luck was to the success of an escape. By the time I escaped, only Alvin Vogel and another prisoner from our compound had escaped from Germany. And my experience proves that luck played a tremendous part, without question, and as I added, unless it was the unsteadying prayers of my mother. The morning I decided to make my attempt, I had packed my little hoard of chocolate bars, socks, and cigarettes in a rucksack and joined the line to the boxcars. Inexplicably, that morning, the Germans decided to spot check the prisoners. As luck would have it, the guards started searching the man in front of me, so that I passed without being searched. If I had been searched and my supplies discovered, the jig would have been up. Then, when he got to the boxcar itself, there was another spot check, and I didn't know whether to go to the head of the line or to the back. Well, while I went to the front of the line, while he was searching the prisoner ahead of me and had his back partially turned, I tossed my rucksack into the corner of the boxcar, and he didn't see it. In Munich, our guard was taken to military academy to clean out rubble, and during the latter part of that morning, an air raid forced us to go to the basement of the building for shelter. During the course of the raid, I was able to get away from the group gathered in a large room to a smaller room down the hall, which was completely unoccupied. It had a broken out window at eye level. I took off my GI clothes, under which I had the civilian clothes, and then noticed the German sergeant in charge of our detail walking up the walk in my direction, and why he did not see me is one of the inexplicable strokes of luck which came my way that day. When he disappeared in the building, I crawled out and started to walk down the street. And the most difficult thing to do was to walk and act as if you belonged. It's very difficult to resist the temptation to look around to see if anybody was following me. Nonetheless, I succeeded in locating route number 2, the highway to the south. And that afternoon I located Grunwald and the farm where the French were located. When I got there, I told the first Frenchman that I saw, and they were unmistakable, who I was, and asked for help, and they very readily agreed. They fed me that night and hid me in the attic when the Germans came to count them. And later on, and this is really unbelievable, I joined them in a hand of bridge and made the only grand slam double and redouble that I've ever made. It's strange what trivialities you remember. The Grunwald Frenchman gave me some food and directions to the next French-operated camp, which was about 7 or 8 miles away. The directions were somewhat bizarre. The town was Traubing, and according to them, the farm was located on a fork in the road just south of town, where I would see a Frenchman pitching hay from a wagon. Well, I was somewhat dubious, but I followed the directions, and lo and behold, the Frenchman was indeed in the farmyard pitching hay. He readily took me to the farm where the French workers were located, and they fed me that night. And the next morning, I was again given directions to the French commando in a city called Starnberg, somewhat larger, some 15 kilometers away. There the barracks chief decided I should go into Italy via the Brenner Pass, both because of my knowledge of Italian and also because the Swiss border was more heavily patrolled and guarded. That night he took me to the train station, and of course there was a blackout. He purchased a ticket to Innsbruck, the northern side of the pass, slipped it to me as he passed by with a bone chance, and to my dismay I noticed that the Gestapo was checking papers at the gate. Because of the darkness, I was able to step over an iron pipe waist-high fence, melding into the crowd boarding the cars, unseen by the Gestapo. The train stopped at Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and all the passengers disembarked. Many of them, including myself, went into the rather large station where there were many Italian workmen returning home to Italy. I joined one of their groups, revealing my identity to one of them, who gave me some information and suggestions on getting into Italy. I boarded the train to Innsbruck with this group, and there we disembarked into a large warehouse with sleeping and eating facilities for the returning Italians, apparently operated by the Italian government. I readily mingled with them, got food stamps for bread, and was assigned a cot. 2 days later, the train for Bolzano was announced, and I boarded it, and when it arrived in the Brenner Pass at the border, everyone again disembarked. And at the pass I noticed a group of Italian soldiers who appeared to be escorted by 2 German guards. It developed that they were prisoners of war of the Germans, those who had rebelled against them after Badoglio's capitulation. They were being escorted to a military camp in Brescia, and there were 35 of them. I mingled with them in the train station and noticed that they were being split into 2 groups, one of 18 and the other of 17, each with a German guard. I attached myself to the 17 and finally concluded the German guard in charge of that group thought he had taken the group of 18. In the middle of the pass, further rail transport was impossible because of the bombing damage. And after walking some distance, we were put on large charcoal burning trucks for the trip to Brescia. It later developed that the truck's ultimate destination was Milan. And during the ride to Brescia, one of the Italian prisoners gave me the address of an Italian partisan in Milan who would help me. The truck arrived in Brescia at nightfall, and the soldiers all disembarked, and I remained in one of the darkened corners of the truck. During the trip, many civilians jumped on the truck for transportation into Milan, and I struck up a conversation with an elderly lady, telling her that I was trying to get to Sicily where my family had been bombed out. And she took pity on me, and although miserably poor herself, gave me a 50 lira note, which I later used for streetcar fare.